The invasion begins. The Galactic Dominion had conquered 100 worlds. They believed Earth would be no different. High Commander Vrogan stood on the bridge of his massive warship, the Doombringer, watching as his unstoppable fleet moved toward Earth. Hundreds of Dominion battleships floated in the darkness of space, their weapons fully charged. The planet below looked small and weak, a world still struggling with primitive technology. The humans had sent a message, a pathetic attempt at diplomacy. "We do not seek war, but we will not kneel." Vrogan had laughed at those words. He had seen civilizations 10 times stronger than Earth fall before the Dominion. These humans were nothing but insects. Their weapons were outdated, their ships were small, and their fleets were laughable. His second-in-command, Captain Lurok, sneered. "Shall we begin, Commander?" Vrogan nodded. "Wipe out their defenses. Show them what true power looks like." The first attack. The Dominion's warships moved forward. Gigantic cruisers, covered in glowing red energy, locked onto Earth's orbiting defense stations. Within seconds, they fired. Bright beams of destruction tore through space, striking Earth's satellites and battle stations. Massive explosions filled the sky, as debris scattered like burning meteors. Vrogan smirked. Too easy. But something felt wrong. He expected panic. He expected desperate calls for surrender. Instead, the humans were silent. Their forces were not retreating. Their ships were not fleeing. Instead, human warships, much smaller but fast, began moving with strange precision. They did not fire wildly like a desperate enemy. No, they were waiting. Lurok frowned. Why are they not attacking? Then the first shockwave hit. The trap is sprung. Out of nowhere, an EMP blast erupted from the dark side of the moon. A pulse of energy rippled through space, shutting down dozens of Dominion warships in an instant. Their engines died. Their weapons went silent. Panic spread across the fleet. "We've lost power," one officer shouted. "Reboot the systems." Now, another screamed. Before the Dominion could recover, the human fleet struck. Sleek, fast warships emerged from the moon's shadow, firing precise blasts at disabled enemy vessels. One after another, Dominion ships exploded like fireworks. Vrogan's eyes widened. What? In all his years of war, no species had ever caught the Dominion off guard. This was not a desperate, weak enemy. This was a force that had planned for this moment. The humans were waiting for them. Earth strikes back. The battle turned into chaos. Human pilots, using advanced maneuvering, weaved through the enemy fleet, targeting weak spots. Dominion ships, still recovering from the EMP, struggled to fire back. One massive battleship lost its shield generators and exploded from a single well-placed torpedo. On the planet's surface, Earth's ground-based defenses activated. Hidden missile silos and laser cannons fired into space, striking vulnerable enemy ships. A transmission echoed across the Dominion fleet. "You should have studied human history," a calm voice said. "We do not surrender. We fight." Vrogan clenched his fists. For the first time in his long, victorious career, he felt fear. The humans were not weak. They were hunters. And now his fleet was the prey. Humanity's first strike. Vrogan stood frozen. This was impossible. In every battle before, the Galactic Dominion had crushed their enemies within minutes. Civilizations had begged for mercy before their fleets. But now, the mighty Dominion was losing. And to whom? Humans. Those weak, primitive creatures. The ones who were supposed to break at the first sign of war. Yet here they were, fighting like demons. The ambush unfolds. The EMP blast had crippled half of Vrogan's fleet, leaving them floating, powerless, while human warships moved in like hunters. Sleek black ships, built for speed and precision, darted between the massive, sluggish Dominion cruisers. They fired with perfect accuracy, targeting engines, shield generators, and weak spots. One Dominion battleship, easily the size of a city, tried to turn its cannons toward the attackers. It never got the chance. A squad of human fighters swarmed it, launching a barrage of missiles at its weapons array. In seconds, the ship's massive cannons exploded, tearing through its hull like fire through dry grass. The once mighty warship became a burning wreck, spiraling toward Earth's atmosphere. This is not possible. On the bridge of the Doombringer, alarms blared. Holographic screens showed one Dominion ship after another falling. Lurok's voice shook. "Commander, we must regroup. We were not prepared for this level of resistance." Vrogan slammed his fist onto the control panel. "Silence. We are the Dominion. We do not fear insects." But the panic had already spread. Officers were shouting over each other, desperately trying to reboot systems, restore shields, and fight back against an enemy they had completely underestimated. And then, another shock. A second wave of human ships appeared. These weren't just fighters. These were battle cruisers. The human counterattack. Vrogan's blood ran cold as a new fleet emerged from the darkness. Earth's true warships. They had been waiting. They had hidden their real fleet, keeping their best ships out of enemy scans, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Now that moment had come. The first of the human battlecruisers, the HSS Valkyrie, charged forward, its hull gleaming under the distant sun. It was smaller than the Dominion's capital ships, but faster, more advanced, and more lethal. It fired. A single concentrated energy beam pierced through an entire Dominion warship, slicing it in half like a hot knife through metal. Another human vessel, the HS Titan, launched a barrage of railgun rounds, each shell punching through multiple Dominion ships, turning their mighty fleet into a field of burning wreckage. No more fear. Vrogan's hands trembled. This wasn't war. This was a massacre. For the first time, he saw the truth. The humans had never been weak. They had been hiding their strength. They had played the Dominion like fools, making them believe Earth was helpless, when in reality, they had prepared for this moment for years. Lurok turned to him, his voice barely a whisper. "Commander, what do we do?" Vrogan had no answer. Because for the first time in his life, he was the one being hunted. The battle turns. Vrogan had fought 100 wars. He had seen entire civilizations reduced to ashes under the Dominion's might. He had crushed rebellions before they could even begin. He had never considered the possibility of losing. Yet now, his once mighty fleet was burning around him. And the humans, they were relentless. The Dominion's counterattack. The bridge of the Doombringer was chaos. Officers shouted, alarms blared, screens flashed red. The Dominion was in full retreat, but there was nowhere to run. Lurok's voice cracked with panic. "Commander, our losses are catastrophic. Over 40 ships destroyed. Another 60 heavily damaged." Vrogan growled, gripping the command console. "We still outnumber them 3-1. Order all ships to regroup and counterattack." Lurok hesitated. "But sir..." "Do it." Across the battlefield, Dominion ships pulled back, forming a defensive wall. Fighters swarmed forward, their pulse cannons firing in a synchronized storm of plasma. For the first time, the humans were forced to retreat. Vrogan's lips curled. "Yes, that's more like it." Then, the human trap snapped shut. The hidden weapons of Earth. Just as the Dominion regained momentum, Earth's defense grid came online. The planet's surface lit up as hidden artillery batteries and railgun platforms activated. These were not crude planetary defenses. They were military-grade superweapons, buried beneath mountains, hidden beneath oceans, waiting for this exact moment. High above Earth, a seemingly harmless space station suddenly shifted. It was not a research facility. It was a weapon. From its core, a massive particle cannon hummed to life. It locked onto the Dominion's largest battleship, a behemoth of metal and power. And then it fired. A searing white beam cut through the void, faster than any Dominion weapon. The warship, a massive fortress of steel, vanished in an instant. One shot. One kill. Vrogan could only watch in horror. We were never weak. The human fleet, once retreating, surged forward with renewed ferocity. They had only pretended to be on the defensive. They had lured the Dominion into overextending, into thinking victory was near. Now, they were unleashing their full power. The HSS Titan broke through the Dominion lines, its railguns tearing through the hull of enemy warships. Fighters weaved through the chaos, surgically dismantling Dominion carriers. And then, a voice cut through the battlefield. It was human, calm, unshaken. You thought we were weak. You thought we would kneel. But you never understood what it means to be human. Vrogan's heart pounded. For the first time in his life, he understood fear. The turning point. The Dominion's formation collapsed. The fleet, once a symbol of unstoppable power, was now a graveyard of burning wreckage. Survivors fled in all directions. Some Dominion captains, desperate to avoid capture, self-destructed their ships. Others tried to jump to hyperspace, only to be shot down before they could escape. Vrogan's hands shook. He had never seen anything like this. This was not a battle. This was annihilation, and it was the Dominion that was being annihilated. The final order. Lurok's voice was barely a whisper. "Commander, what are your orders?" Vrogan clenched his fists. There was only one order left to give. Retreat. But deep down, he knew the truth. There was no escape, because humanity was not just winning the battle. They were sending a message, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The human spirit. Vrogan had never known defeat. He had watched civilizations crumble. He had seen planets burn, their people begging for mercy before the Dominion's might. But now he was the one on the edge of destruction. They are not like the others. The Doombringer's bridge was a nightmare. Officers shouted over one another, screens flickered with casualty reports, and ships were dying faster than commands could be given. Lurok's face was pale, his voice trembling. "Commander, we have lost 70% of our fleet. We can't hold the line." Vrogan gritted his teeth. "We are the Dominion. We do not surrender." Lurok turned to him, eyes filled with something Vrogan had never seen before. Fear. "They are not like the others," Lurok whispered. "They do not break." Vrogan wanted to deny it, to call his officer a coward, but deep inside, he knew the truth. The humans should have surrendered by now. Every other species had. But instead, they fought harder. Every ship they lost only made them more aggressive. Every casualty only made them strike back faster. This wasn't desperation. This was something far more dangerous. The resistance that refused to die. On the ground, Dominion troops had landed in key cities, expecting a swift conquest. They were wrong. The humans had let them land. And then they had closed the trap. Cities became war zones. Human soldiers struck from the shadows, using underground tunnels, hacking enemy systems, luring Dominion forces into death traps. Civilians didn't run. They fought. Men, women, even children used whatever they could find. Homemade explosives, EMP devices, old rifles, turning every street into a battlefield. A squad of Dominion soldiers entered what they thought was an abandoned building. Only one ran back out, screaming. The humans weren't just defending. They were hunting. A message from Earth. Vrogan's calm officer turned, his eyes wide. "Commander, the humans are transmitting a message. To us." Vrogan's jaw tightened. "Put it through." A holographic screen flickered to life. There stood a human, a fleet commander, clad in battle-worn armor, his face calm. His voice was steady, unshaken. "You came to our home thinking we would kneel. You thought we would surrender." The commander's eyes darkened. "You were wrong." Vrogan felt something cold settle in his chest. This was not a plea for peace. This was a warning. The fall of the Dominion's might. More human reinforcements arrived, fresh warships, hidden until now. They cut through the remaining Dominion forces like a blade through flesh. A Dominion dreadnought tried to escape. It never made it. A well-placed human torpedo ripped through its reactor core. The explosion lit up the sky, a beacon of the Dominion's failure. On the ground, Dominion commanders sent distress signals. None were answered, because for the first time in history, the Dominion was losing the war it had started. Vrogan's realization. The Doombringer shook as explosions ripped through the fleet outside. Luruk turned, his face pale. "Commander, we must leave." Vrogan stared at the battlefield. He had never lost before. Never once. But today, he was watching the end of the Dominion's invincibility. He clenched his fists, because he knew what this meant. If the humans could do this, the rest of the galaxy would rise next. The Dominion's reign of terror was over, and humanity had just become the most dangerous force in the universe. The breaking point. The Doombringer trembled as another explosion rocked the once mighty Dominion flagship. Vrogan clutched the command console, his breathing heavy, his mind racing. The Galactic Dominion had never lost a war. Until now. The fleet in flames. Outside, the Dominion's mighty armada was no longer an armada. It was a graveyard. Gigantic warships, once feared across the galaxy, now floated lifelessly, their hulls torn apart by human firepower. Flames and debris drifted in the void, marking the spots where entire legions of Dominion warriors had fallen. Luruk turned from the display, his face pale. "Commander, we have lost over 80% of the fleet." Vrogan's fists clenched. Unacceptable. But deep inside, he knew there was nothing left to accept. This battle was already over. The last desperate move. And yet, Vrogan refused to accept defeat. He turned toward the weapons officer. "Activate the Doomsday Cannon." Luruk's eyes widened in horror. "Commander, no. That weapon will destroy half of Earth's surface." Vrogan's face darkened. "Then let it burn. If we cannot rule them, we will erase them." A sinister hum filled the ship as the Doombringer's most powerful weapon came online. This was not just a weapon. It was a planetary annihilator, designed to turn entire civilizations into nothing but dust. The final betrayal. But before the cannon could fire, the alarm screamed. Breach detected. Vrogan spun around just as the bridge doors exploded inward. Out of the smoke, a team of human commandos stormed in, silent, lethal, and precise. The first Dominion officer barely had time to raise his weapon before a human blade slashed through his throat. Another tried to activate defenses. A single shot took him down. Vrogan snarled, reaching for his own weapon. A voice stopped him cold. "You've lost." The lead human stepped forward. His armor was scared, his face emotionless, but his eyes burned with something Vrogan had never seen before. Not arrogance, not cruelty. Cold, unwavering certainty. The human commander leveled his rifle at Vrogan's head. "You thought we were weak." Vrogan's hand shook. "You thought we would kneel." He gritted his teeth, but he said nothing. Because he knew this human was right. But the truth is, the commander's voice dropped to a whisper. "You were never fighting to win. You were fighting to survive." And now, even survival was out of reach. The fall of the Dominion. A single transmission echoed across the battlefield. The Doombringer had fallen. Its captain, its high commander, was a prisoner of war. The remaining Dominion ships, leaderless and broken, scattered into the void, fleeing like frightened animals. They had come to conquer. They had come to burn Earth. Instead, it was their own fleet that burned. And at that moment, the Galactic Dominion, the greatest empire the universe had ever known, was no longer invincible. It was hunted. And humanity. They had just become the predators. The final stand. The Doombringer, once the pride of the Dominion's fleet, now drifted in the void, silent, broken, defeated. Flames flickered across its shattered hull. What was once a symbol of terror was now a monument to failure. On its ruined bridge, Vrogan knelt, his wrists bound in metal restraints. He had never knelt before. Not to kings, not to gods, not to anyone. But now he knelt before a human, a galaxy watching in silence. Across the battlefield, the remnants of the Dominion's fleet had stopped running. They weren't just witnessing the loss of their commander. They were witnessing the end of an era. For centuries, the Dominion had ruled with absolute power. Entire species had fallen at their feet. But today, they had learned the truth. Humanity was not just another species to conquer. They were something else, something dangerous, something that did not know how to kneel. The last conversation. The human commander, standing before Vrogan, studied him for a long moment. Then he spoke. "This is where it ends." Vrogan's lips curled into a snarl. "Kill me if you must, but the Dominion will rise again." The human didn't flinch. "No, it won't." Vrogan laughed, bitter and empty. "Do you think you are the first to strike against us? Countless rebels have tried before you. The Dominion always returns." The human commander knelt, staring into his enemy's eyes. Not this time. Vrogan saw no arrogance in the man's face, no cruelty, just a cold, unshakable truth. The Dominion was finished, and the galaxy would never fear them again. The doom of the Doombringer. Outside, the last of the human fleet positioned themselves around the dying Dominion warship. They had no need for executions, no need for speeches. The battle had spoken for itself. "This ship is done." The human commander stood, turning toward his soldiers. "Get to the escape pods." Vrogan's breath hitched. "You're leaving me here." The human met his gaze, his voice calm. "You don't deserve a warrior's death." He turned away as the escape pods launched, leaving the once mighty commander alone in the ruins of his own hubris. As the last human vessel jumped to hyperspace, the Doombringer's core finally collapsed. A blinding flash, a final explosion, and then the warship that had once led countless invasions was gone. The galaxy holds its breath. Word of the battle spread like wildfire. Planets that had cowered for centuries now saw a new future. The Dominion had fallen, and the age of humanity had begun. For the first time in galactic history, it was not the Dominion that was feared. It was the species that had defeated them. Victory and fire. The Doombringer was gone. Its wreckage drifted in the void, a burning tombstone for the Dominion's failure. For centuries, the Dominion had crushed planets beneath their rule, leaving behind only ashes and silence. But today, it was their own fleet that burned, and the galaxy was watching. A war that changed everything. From the surface of Earth, people looked up at the sky, watching the last fires of battle flicker in the darkness. There was no celebration, no cheers, only a deep, quiet understanding. They had done the impossible. They had faced the greatest empire in the known universe. And they had won. A warning to the stars. A final message was broadcast across the Dominion's remaining forces, across every colony, every planet, every world that had ever suffered under their rule. The voice was calm, unwavering. Earth does not kneel. Humanity does not surrender. The message carried not just to the Dominion, but to every species beyond their borders. If you come for us again, you will burn like the rest. The remnants of the Dominion. Across the galaxy, Dominion forces scattered. Some ships went dark, their captains choosing exile over the shame of defeat. Others tried to regroup, only to be hunted down by rebel worlds that had long awaited this day. The empire that had once ruled 1,000 systems with fear had become the hunted. And the hunters, the humans, the future of the unknown. For the first time in history, the galaxy was no longer ruled by the Dominion. For the first time, planets that had once cowered stood tall. And at the heart of it all, Earth remained, standing in the silence after war. Not as a victim, not as a conquered world, but as a legend. The final truth. The galaxy had feared the Dominion for centuries. But in the end, it was not the Dominion they should have feared. It was humanity. And now, the universe would never forget their name.